A single audio message sent by mistake. 73 words of brutal honesty about the most powerful man in the company. And now, Edith was face to face with him. The untouchable CEO everyone feared but no one dared to challenge. He didn't yell. He didn't fire her. He just smiled in a way that made her heart race and said the words that would change everything. From now on, you'll be working directly with me. If you're curious to find out how this story ends, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're listening from. Your presence here means so much. You know that feeling when you've stopped being yourself under all the pressure? When you're living on autopilot, forgetting your own dreams? There's something pinned in the comments that speaks directly to this. It's not for everyone, just for those who still feel they deserve more from their own life. Edith never imagined that a moment of honest venting could change the course of her entire life. It was Thursday, almost noon, and she was holed up in the company break room with her best friend, Rebecca, venting about the most intimidating CEO in New York. Ethan Blackwell, the man who made seasoned executives sweat with just one icy look. The man whose name was whispered in the hallways as if he were some kind of supernatural entity. "He's unbearable, Becca," Edith grumbled as she stirred her coffee with unnecessary force. "That man is an elegant tyrant with a movie star face and an ego the size of Manhattan. Seriously, how does someone manage to be so arrogant and so ridiculously good-looking at the same time?" "It's unfair," Rebecca laughed, nearly choking on her sandwich. "Edith, you need to record this. That description is pure poetry." And that's exactly what Edith did. She grabbed her phone, hit the record button, and let loose a 3-minute audio packed with sharp sarcasm, brutally honest observations, and some questionable comparisons between Ethan Blackwell and classic movie villains. Every word was seasoned with that acidic humor that was her trademark, the shield she used to deal with impossible bosses and uncomfortable situations. "There," she said, laughing as she listened to her own voice distilling elegant venom. "Sent it to our private group. At least we can get a laugh out of this hellish week." Except Edith didn't send it to the private group. She sent it to the general corporate group, the group where all the executives were, all the managers, and of course, Ethan Blackwell himself. Edith's heart stopped when she saw the 3 blue check marks appear below the message. Read by 47 people, including the man she just called an elegant tyrant with a movie star face. "Becca," Edith's voice came out as a strangled whisper. "I just made the biggest mistake of my life." Her phone started vibrating, messages popping up, some colleagues sending skull emojis, others simply, "R.I.P. Edith." One sent a photo of a lit candle with the caption, "In memory of your career." Rebecca's eyes went wide. "You didn't do what I think you did." "I did." "In the general group?" "In the general group. With the CEO in it?" "With the CEO in it." The silence that followed was deafening. Edith felt her stomach turn, her hands go cold, the entire world crashing down on her shoulders. She was going to be fired, obviously. Probably escorted out of the building by security. Maybe even sued for defamation. Her career was over before it even took off. 2 hours later, the summons arrived. A dry message from the executive assistant. "Miss Walker, Mr. Blackwell requests your presence in his office. Immediately." Edith climbed the 15 floors to the top level as if she were walking to the guillotine. Every heartbeat echoed in her ears. Every step felt heavier than the last. The hallway leading to Ethan's office was lined with tinted glass and Italian marble. Cold, impersonal, intimidating. Exactly like him. The door was slightly ajar. She took a deep breath, straightened her blouse, lifted her chin trying to gather some shred of dignity, and walked in. Ethan Blackwell was standing by the panoramic window, hands in the pockets of his impeccably tailored pants, watching the city below like someone commanding a chessboard. He didn't turn around right away. He let the silence hang in the air, thick and suffocating. When he finally turned, Edith felt the impact. She saw him every day in the hallways, in meetings, in presentations, but never like this. Never this close. Never with those dark gray eyes fixed directly on her, intense as a storm about to break. "Miss Walker." His voice was deep, controlled, dangerously calm. "I believe you know why you're here." Edith swallowed hard. Sir, I want to apologize. It was a terrible mistake. I didn't mean to. Didn't mean to what? He took 2 steps toward her, slow, calculated. Didn't mean to call me a tyrant? Or didn't mean for me to hear it? The flush rose up her neck, burning her cheeks. Both. Ethan stopped a few feet away, close enough for Edith to catch the subtle scent of his cologne, something woody, expensive, devastatingly masculine. Close enough to notice the sharp line of his jaw, the way his eyes seemed to read every thought passing through her mind. You know what I found most interesting about your audio? He tilted his head slightly, as if analyzing a rare piece. The honesty. Most people here spend all day agreeing with me, flattering me, saying what they think I want to hear. You were brutally honest. Edith blinked, confused. Is that good? It's rare. He crossed his arms, the muscles becoming evident under his perfectly fitted white shirt. And useful? Useful? From now on, you'll be working directly with me. Edith's jaw dropped. What? You heard me perfectly, Miss Walker. A slight smile touched the corner of his lips, not exactly friendly, but definitely challenging. I need someone who's not afraid to tell me the truth. Apparently you qualify. But I insulted you, and you survived to tell the tale. He stepped closer. Now Edith had to look up to meet his eyes. The question is, do you have the courage to do it again? This time, face to face? Her heart raced. There was something in his eyes that wasn't just authority. It was curiosity, challenge, something that made the air between them feel electrically charged. Edith took a deep breath, gathering courage. I do. Good. Ethan extended his hand. Welcome to the executive team. When her fingers touched his, Edith felt a current run through her entire arm. The grip was firm, warm, and lasted half a second longer than professional. His eyes held hers with an intensity that made something tighten deep in her stomach. He released her hand slowly, his fingers sliding away almost reluctantly. I'll see you Monday morning, 7 sharp, don't be late. Edith left that office with shaky legs and a racing heart, not fully understanding what had just happened. She hadn't been fired. She'd been promoted, and somehow that felt even more dangerous. Monday came way too fast. Edith woke up at 5:30 in the morning with her stomach in knots, a strange mix of nervousness and something she refused to name. She chose a dark gray outfit, understated but elegant, pulled her hair back into a tight bun and looked at herself in the mirror, trying to find the confident woman who had faced Ethan Blackwell days ago. At 6:55, she was at his office door. At 7 on the dot, the door opened. Ethan wore a navy blue shirt without a tie, the sleeves rolled up to his forearms, in a way that should be illegal in corporate settings. He stared at her for a full second before stepping aside, allowing her to enter. Punctual, he observed, returning to his desk covered in documents. First impression is positive. I didn't plan on giving you reasons to fire me on my first day, Edith replied, surprising herself with her casual tone. His eyes gleamed with something that might be amusement. Touché. The first few weeks were an intense and unsettling dance. Ethan threw her into the deep end daily. Impossible meetings, last-minute presentations, decisions that needed to be made in seconds. But Edith discovered something about herself. She didn't sink. She swam. And she swam well. Your analysis on the merger is wrong, she said on a Wednesday afternoon, tossing the report onto his desk without ceremony. Ethan raised an eyebrow, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed. Is it now? The numbers don't lie. You're looking at immediate profit but ignoring the long-term impact on organizational culture. It's going to be a disaster. Silence. Heavy. Charged. Then Ethan smiled. A small smile, almost imperceptible, but genuine. Prove it. And she did. For 3 hours they debated, disagreed, challenged each other. Edith gestured as she spoke, passionate about every argument. Ethan leaned forward, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made the air feel warmer, heavier. At some point, when Edith pointed to a chart on the screen, he moved closer to get a better look. His shoulder brushed hers. An accidental touch. The briefest moment. But it sent a wave of heat across Edith's skin as if it had been intentional. She froze for a split second, So did Ethan. Their eyes met. He was so close that she could see the small golden flecks in his gray irises, feel the heat radiating from his body, notice how his breathing had become slightly deeper. "You were saying?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. Edith blinked, forcing herself to step back. The chart, the numbers. Right, the numbers. But neither of them looked back at the screen right away. The teasing became part of their routine. Ethan constantly tested her, throwing out challenges like someone casting bait to see if she'd bite. And Edith always bit, with sharp intelligence and a defiant smile that he started looking for without realizing it. "You know this is impossible, right?" she said one morning when he asked for a complete report in 4 hours. Impossible is a word mediocre people use. Wow, that's deep. Did you get that from a motivational poster? His lips curved. Did you just call me cliched? If the tie fits. He stood up, walking around the desk with slow, deliberate steps. Edith felt her heart speed up, but she kept her chin raised, her eyes steady on his. Ethan stopped in front of her, close, very close. "You know what your problem is, Miss Walker? I'm sure you're going to tell me," she replied, her voice coming out softer than planned. "You don't know when to back down." He tilted his head, his eyes dropping briefly to her lips before returning to her gaze. "It's dangerous. Funny." Edith took a step forward, eliminating the little space that still existed between them. "I was thinking the same thing about you." The air grew thick, electrified. Edith could feel the tension vibrating between their bodies, a rope stretched to its limit about to snap. His chest rose and fell in a rhythm that mirrored hers. His gray eyes were dark, intense, saying things his mouth refused to verbalize. For one infinite moment, Edith was absolutely certain he was going to kiss her. But then the phone rang. Ethan pulled back abruptly, running his hand through his hair in a gesture of contained frustration. "Answer it," he ordered, his voice tense. Edith obeyed, her hands trembling slightly as she picked up the receiver. The following days were delicious torture. They worked side by side, bodies too close, gazes that lingered half a second beyond appropriate. When Ethan passed her documents, his fingers brushed hers. When she leaned over the desk to point something out, she felt his gaze burning into her back. On a Friday night, when everyone else had already left, they remained in the office finishing an urgent proposal. The city glittered below, Manhattan lit up like an inverted starry sky. "Don't you ever stop?" Edith asked, stretching her tired neck. "Stopping is wasting time. Stopping is living." Ethan stared at her, something shifting in his expression. "And you think I don't live? I think you exist. It's different." He stayed silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on her with unexpected vulnerability. Then, to Edith's surprise, he smiled. Not that calculated corporate smile, but something genuine, almost sad. "You don't have a filter, do you?" "I had one once, sent it in the wrong audio and ended up here." His laugh was low, rough, enveloping. Edith felt the sound reverberate in her chest like a musical note. "You want to know something?" Ethan stood up, walking to the window. "That audio was the most honest thing anyone said to me in years." Edith approached slowly, stopping beside him. "You can't be surrounded only by people who flatter you." "I'm not anymore." He turned his head, looking directly at her. "I have you." The way he said it, as if she were something precious, essential, made Edith's heart leap uncontrollably. "Ethan." She barely recognized her own voice, soft and charged with emotion. He raised his hand slowly, as if giving himself permission for something forbidden, and brushed away a strand of hair that had escaped from her bun. His fingers grazed Edith's cheek, leaving a trail of warmth on her skin. "You're dangerous," he whispered, his eyes fixed on hers. "So are you." His hand remained there, the palm warm against her face. His thumb traced a gentle line along her cheekbone. Edith closed her eyes briefly, allowing herself to feel that touch, that connection. When she opened her eyes again, she found Ethan closer, his face inches from hers. She could feel his warm breath against her lips, see every detail of those stormy eyes. Edith. Her name sounded like a plea, a warning, a promise. She held his wrist, keeping his hand against her face. "Don't pull away now." But he did. With visible effort, Ethan took a step back, his jaw tense, his hands closing into fists. It's late. You should go home. The sudden coldness hurt more than Edith expected. Ethan. Good night, Miss Walker. And so the dance between them continued, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, in a rhythm that neither of them could break. The trip to Portland wasn't in Edith's plans, but when Ethan announced she'd be accompanying him to a crucial meeting with West Coast investors, she had no choice but to pack a bag and head to the airport. The flight passed in tense silence. Ethan worked on his laptop, his forehead creased in concentration, while Edith pretended to read a report but was actually watching his reflection in the window. The soft cabin light accentuated the strong line of his jaw, the curve of his lips that she'd spent weeks trying not to imagine against hers. When they landed in Portland, the sky was heavy with dark, ominous clouds. The driver who picked them up mentioned the approaching storm, but neither of them paid much attention. They had work to do. The meeting was intense. Edith surprised herself with her ability to argue, refuting the investors' objections with precise data and a confidence she didn't know she possessed. More than once, she felt Ethan's gaze on her, not evaluating but proud. When they left the building at 9 at night, the storm had already begun. Torrential rain fell in thick sheets, thunder roared above them, and the wind whipped everything around them. We need to get to the hotel, Ethan said, his phone pressed to his ear as he tried to reach the driver. But the airport had already closed, all flights canceled, the entire city on alert. And when they arrived at the hotel, exhausted and soaked, the receptionist delivered the news with an apologetic smile. We only have 1 room available. All the others are occupied because of the canceled flights. Edith felt her stomach drop. 1 room? With 2 separate beds, the receptionist added quickly, as if that solved everything. Ethan handed over his credit card without hesitation. We'll take it. The room was small, cozy, and dangerously intimate. 2 twin beds separated by a narrow nightstand, a large window where the storm unfolded in all its dramatic fury, and an awkward silence that filled every inch of the space. Edith dropped her bag in the corner, trying to seem casual. Well, this is different. Different is a polite word, Ethan murmured, loosening his tie with a tired gesture. They took turns in the bathroom. When Edith came out wearing an oversized t-shirt and sweatpants, she found Ethan standing by the window, wearing only pajama pants and a simple t-shirt that revealed surprisingly muscular arms. He looked different like this. Less CEO, more human. Can't sleep? She asked, sitting on her bed. I never can the first hour. He turned, leaning against the windowsill. You? My brain takes a while to shut down. A small smile touched his lips. We're alike in that. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of unspoken things, of tension that had been building for weeks, of possibilities that hung in the air like electricity before lightning. Can I ask you a question? Edith finally said. Depends on the question. Why did you really hire me? And don't tell me it was because of honesty. Ethan sighed, running his hand through his hair in a rare display of vulnerability. He walked to his bed and sat down, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped together. You made me laugh, he said simply. In that ridiculous and completely inappropriate audio, you made me laugh for the first time in months. And when you walked into my office expecting to be destroyed but with your chin held high, I realized you were real, genuine. In a world where everyone wears masks, you just existed. Edith's heart tightened. Ethan, my turn to ask a question. He raised his gaze, meeting her eyes through the soft dimness of the room. Why do you stay? I know I push you beyond your limits. I know I'm difficult. So why haven't you asked for a transfer? Edith took a deep breath. The truth was there, pulsing between them, impossible to ignore. Because you challenge me. You make me want to be better. And because... She hesitated, but the words escaped before she could stop them. Because when you look at me, I feel seen. Really seen. The air shifted. It became denser, warmer, electrically charged. Ethan stood up slowly and crossed the small space between the beds. He sat beside Edith, so close she could feel the heat radiating from him, the clean scent of soap mixed with something inherently masculine. Want to know a secret? He turned his face to her, his gray eyes intense, even in the dim light. "You scare me too." "Me?" Edith let out a disbelieving laugh. "How?" "Because you make me feel things I swore I'd never feel again." His voice was rough, loaded with contained emotion. 5 years ago, I was different, more open, until someone I completely trusted betrayed me, used my feelings against me, sold company information, almost destroyed everything I'd built. Edith felt her chest tighten. "Ethan, since then I've built walls, high ones, thick ones, impenetrable." He let out a bitter laugh. "Or so I thought. Until you showed up with your sharp humor and brutal honesty and started tearing them down brick by brick." Without thinking, Edith reached out and touched his face. The stubble scratched softly against her palm. Ethan closed his eyes at the touch, as if memorizing the sensation. "I have walls too," she confessed quietly. "I use humor because it's safer than showing I'm hurt. My father left me when I was 8. My mother spent years telling me I wasn't good enough. I learned early on that laughing was better than crying." His eyes opened, dark and intense. "You're more than good enough. You're more than your walls too." They stayed like that, frozen in time, their faces inches apart. Edith's hand still rested against his cheek. Both their breathing was uneven, intertwined in the tiny space separating them. Outside, thunder roared. The rain beat against the window with renewed force. But inside there was only the sound of racing hearts and the weight of everything left unsaid. "Edith." Ethan whispered her name like a prayer. "If I kiss you now, it won't be for a moment. It won't be on impulse. It'll be because I want to, because I need to, and because I can't keep pretending I don't feel this." Her heart raced. "Then kiss me." But he didn't kiss her. Not yet. Instead, his hand slowly rose, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw with a reverence that took the air from Edith's lungs. His thumb brushed her lower lip, gentle, questioning, asking permission. Edith held his wrist, keeping his hand in place. She turned her face slightly and kissed his warm palm, her eyes fixed on his. The gesture broke something inside Ethan. With a deep sigh that seemed to come from an old and wounded place, he leaned his forehead against hers. "You don't know what you're doing to me," he murmured. "Then show me." They stayed like that for long minutes, foreheads touching, breaths mingling, hands intertwined. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, but it was a promise, a surrender, a beginning. When they finally separated, Ethan placed a soft kiss on Edith's forehead, lingering and full of meaning. "Sleep," he whispered. "Tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll figure out what to do about this." Edith returned to her bed, her body still vibrating from his closeness. She lay on her side, looking through the dimness at Ethan's silhouette in the bed next to hers. And when their hands met in the space between the beds, fingers loosely intertwined, neither of them let go until sleep finally came. Morning came slowly, with pale dawn light filtering through the curtains. Edith woke up with her fingers still intertwined with Ethan's, that simple touch that had lasted all night. She watched his face relaxed in sleep. The lines of tension softened, his lips slightly parted, the vulnerability he'd never show when awake. When his gray eyes opened and met hers, something passed between them. An awareness, a vivid memory of everything they'd shared the night before. "Good morning," she whispered. "Good morning." His voice was rough with sleep, too intimate for that fragile moment. They let go slowly, almost reluctantly, and reality came back with force. They had a flight to catch, a city to return to, a professional life that didn't include hands intertwined in the darkness. The flight back to New York was quiet, but different. Ethan worked, but now and then his eyes met Edith's. Small smiles exchanged, an accidental brush of fingers when he passed her documents. The promise of, "Tomorrow we'll figure out what to do about this," hung between them like an unfinished melody. But tomorrow never came. The following Monday, Ethan was different, distant, cold. When Edith walked into his office with the morning coffee that had become a silent ritual between them, he barely looked up. "Leave it on the desk," he said without looking at her. Edith felt her chest tighten. "Ethan?" "Miss Walker," he corrected, his voice sharp as glass. We're in the workplace. We need to maintain professionalism. The words were a slap. Edith recoiled as if she'd been physically struck. Of course. Sorry. She left the coffee and walked out, her heart silently shattered. The days that followed were slow torture. Ethan avoided eye contact. He answered her messages with monosyllables. When they needed to be in the same room, he kept a deliberate physical distance as if proximity burned. Edith tried to understand, tried to give him space, but the pain of rejection grew each day, transforming into an open wound that bled every time he ignored her. On a Thursday, 2 weeks after Portland, she couldn't take it anymore. She waited until everyone left and walked into his office without knocking. Ethan was by the window, hands in his pockets, his posture rigid. "We need to talk," Edith said, closing the door behind her. "There's nothing to talk about." "That's a lie." She crossed the room, stopping a few steps from him. "What happened, Ethan? What changed?" Nothing changed. He finally turned, but his eyes were empty, shielded. "Portland was a mistake. We let our emotions get the better of us. It won't happen again." "A mistake?" Edith's voice trembled. "You held my hand all night. You told me about your wounds. You promised we'd figure out together what to do with what we felt. And now it's just a mistake?" "That's exactly what it was." He crossed his arms, his posture defensive. "Miss Walker, you're a valuable employee. But that's all you can be. Professional. Nothing more." Edith felt tears burn her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You're a coward." His jaw tightened. "Careful." "No." She took a step forward, her chin raised, even with her heart bleeding. "You know what I said in that audio? That you were an elegant tyrant. I was wrong. You're not a tyrant, you're worse. You're an elegant coward who runs from what he feels because he's afraid to be happy. You don't know anything about me," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. "I know everything," Edith exploded, her voice breaking. "I know you were betrayed and it broke you. I know you built walls so high that even you can't climb them anymore. I know that when you look at me, you feel something that terrifies you. And I know you're doing exactly what you did 5 years ago, cutting people off before they can hurt you." Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Ethan stared at her with stormy eyes, his fists clenched at his sides. She could see the battle happening inside him, the desire to reach for her against the fear of surrendering. "Portland didn't mean anything," he said finally, each word coming out forced. "It was just 2 colleagues stuck in a storm. Nothing more." The lie was so obvious, so painful, that Edith felt something break definitively inside her. "You know what? You're right." She took 2 steps back, creating physical and emotional distance. "Portland didn't mean anything. Because you don't allow anything to mean something. Because living requires courage and you'd rather die inside than risk feeling again." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Edith." She stopped, but didn't turn around. "It's Miss Walker, remember? We need to maintain professionalism." When she reached the door, her hand trembling on the handle, she heard his voice one last time. Low, broken, almost inaudible. "I'm sorry." But Edith didn't respond. She just left, leaving behind the man who was too afraid to love her and the version of herself who had believed she could be loved. That night, in her empty apartment, Edith finally allowed the tears to fall. She cried for the broken promise, for the lost connection, for the man who had chosen fear over her. And she swore to herself that she would never let her guard down again for someone who didn't have the courage to stay. Meanwhile, 16 floors above, Ethan remained in his darkened office, his forehead pressed against the cold window, mentally replaying all the cruel words he'd said, knowing each one was a lie, knowing he'd just destroyed the only real thing he'd had in years, and hating himself for it. But what he didn't know was that the distance had a reason. An email received days after Portland from an important investor. "I've heard rumors about you and an employee. We can't partner with a company where the CEO mixes personal relationships with business. Fix this or the merger is off." Ethan thought he was protecting Edith, protecting the company, protecting himself. But all he did was destroy all 3. The following week, the atmosphere between them was frigid. Edith performed her duties with mechanical perfection, but the spark had disappeared from her eyes. She didn't tease anymore, didn't smile. She wasn't Edith anymore, she was just Miss Walker, efficient and distant. Ethan watched the transformation with a heavy heart. Every time she entered the room without looking at him, every time she responded with professional monosyllables, he felt her absence like physical pain. But it was better this way, he told himself. It was safer. Until James Carter showed up. The new marketing director was charming, funny, attentive, and clearly interested in Edith. And Edith, hurt and tired of waiting for someone who would never come, started responding. That's when Ethan understood that losing Edith to fear was one thing, but seeing her in another man's arms, that was unbearable. James Carter had everything Ethan didn't show: lightness, spontaneous humor, and the ability to make Edith smile again. He showed up at her desk with coffee, cracked jokes during tedious meetings, and invited her to lunch with a frequency that didn't go unnoticed by anyone, especially not by Ethan. The first time Ethan saw them laughing together in the break room, something fierce and primal roared inside him. James was leaning against the counter, too close to Edith, and she was laughing in that free way she used to reserve for their moments. His hand brushed her arm casually, and Edith didn't pull away. Ethan clenched his jaw so hard he felt the pain radiate through his jawbone. "Boss?" Rebecca appeared at his side, following his gaze. "Oh, I see." "There's nothing to see," he replied coldly, turning abruptly. But there was, and everyone in the company noticed. Edith knew exactly what she was doing. It wasn't revenge, or maybe it was, just a little. It was survival. James was safe, present, available, everything Ethan refused to be. When James invited her to dinner on a Friday night, Edith accepted without hesitation. "You deserve someone who's not afraid to claim you," Rebecca had said, helping her choose a dress. "James is nice. Give him a chance." But as Edith was about to leave the office wearing a navy blue dress that hugged her curves perfectly, Ethan appeared in the hallway. His eyes traveled over every inch of her, slowly, intensely, as if he were memorizing or perhaps claiming. When they finally met hers, there was fire in that gray gaze. "Business dinner?" he asked, his voice too controlled. "Personal dinner," Edith replied, lifting her chin defiantly. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "With Carter? That's none of your business." "Edith. It's Miss Walker, remember?" She walked past him, leaving a trail of perfume that Ethan inhaled deeply, his eyes closing briefly. "Good night, Mr. Blackwell." Dinner with James was pleasant. He was attentive, interesting, asked all the right questions. But when he held her hand across the table, Edith felt nothing. Just the warmth of skin against skin. No electricity, no shivers, no spark. Nothing like when Ethan touched her. On Saturday, James invited her to lunch. On Sunday, he sent flowers. And on Monday, when they arrived at the office together laughing at some inside joke, Ethan finally snapped. The afternoon meeting was to discuss the third quarter marketing campaign. James was presenting his ideas enthusiastically, gesturing animatedly. Edith watched attentively, taking notes, occasionally smiling at one of his comments. "The approach is too generic," Ethan interrupted abruptly, his voice cutting. "None of this is innovative." James blinked, surprised. "Sir, I believe the data shows you're proposing the same thing 3 competitors have already done. Where's the originality?" "Ethan," Edith intervened calmly, using his name for the first time in weeks. "James's proposal has merit. Maybe if you actually paid attention instead of what?" He stood up, his eyes fixed on her with blazing intensity. "Say it, Miss Walker." "Finish the thought." The air in the room grew tense. The other participants exchanged uncomfortable looks. "Instead of judging without basis," Edith finished, keeping her gaze steady on his. "Without basis?" Ethan let out a humorless laugh. "I've worked at this company for 10 years. I built this empire from nothing. I think I know how to recognize when a proposal is mediocre, or when you're letting personal issues interfere with professionalism." Edith shot back, standing up as well. The silence that followed was deafening. "Everyone's dismissed," Ethan said without taking his eyes off Edith. "Except Miss Walker." James hesitated. "Edith, do you want me to stay?" "She doesn't need protection," Ethan growled before she could answer. Out, now. When the door closed, leaving them alone, the tension exploded. How dare you humiliate me in front of the team? Edith began, her voice shaking with anger. I humiliated you? Ethan walked around the desk, each step deliberate and predatory. You spend weeks parading around with Carter like he's some kind of trophy, laughing too loud, touching his arm, and I'm the problem? Jealous, Ethan? She crossed her arms, but her heart was racing. That's rich coming from someone who said Portland didn't mean anything. It wasn't jealousy. He lied blatantly, stopping in front of her. It was professionalism. Office relationships cause problems. Then why are you trembling? Edith took a step forward, eliminating the space between them. Why are your fists clenched? Why can't you stand seeing another man near me? Because you're mine. The confession exploded from him before he could stop it. Edith froze. What? Ethan ran his hand through his hair, frustrated, exposed. You're mine, damn it. You always have been, since that damn audio, since the first day you walked into my office with that raised chin, since Portland when I held your hand and realized I never wanted to let go. But you did let go, she whispered, her eyes shining. You pushed me away. You told me it didn't mean anything. I lied. He took a step forward, invading her space. I lied because I was scared, because an investor threatened to cancel the merger if I kept getting involved with you, because I thought protecting you meant pushing you away. You didn't protect me. Her voice broke. You destroyed me. I know. Ethan raised his hands, hesitant before finally touching her face with a reverence that bordered on worship. I know, and I hate myself for it. But seeing you with him, Edith, seeing another man make you smile, touching you, having what I wasted, it's killing me. The tears finally escaped. You have no right to be jealous, not after everything. I know. He wiped away the tears with his thumbs, the touch too tender for the intensity of the moment. I have no right at all. But I'm asking anyway. Choose me. Choose the coward who's afraid of losing you. Choose the idiot who pushed you away when he should have held you tighter. Ethan. Edith closed her eyes, the internal battle visible in every line of her face. Look at me. He leaned his forehead against hers, their breaths mingling. Please, look at me. She opened her eyes and found so much desire, so much regret, so much raw need that the air left her lungs. You're going to hurt me again, she whispered. Probably. He was brutally honest. I'm terrible at this, at feeling, at trusting, at loving, but I'll try, I swear I'll try. Just don't give up on me yet. I should. You should, he agreed, his lips grazing her forehead. But will you? Edith knew she should say yes. Should protect her heart. Should choose the safety that James offered. But when Ethan tilted his face, his lips millimeters from hers, asking without words if he could, she couldn't resist. You're an idiot, she whispered against his mouth. I am. He smiled, that rare, devastating smile. Am I your idiot? In response, Edith pulled his tie, eliminating the last inch of distance. And finally, he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was weeks of contained hunger, frustration transformed into passion, fear converted into need. His mouth claimed hers with an intensity that made Edith's knees weak. He held her by the waist, pulling her against his body while she tangled her fingers in his hair. The kiss was everything Portland had promised, but hadn't delivered. It was surrender and claim. It was apology and promise. It was Ethan finally tearing down the walls and Edith finally allowing herself to feel again. When they separated, both breathless, Ethan pressed his forehead against hers. Come with me, he whispered, his voice hoarse. Now. Ethan, it's 3 p.m. I don't care. He kissed the corner of her mouth, her jaw just below her ear. I need you, only you. And Edith, abandoning all reason, all caution, all protection, said yes. Ethan's apartment was on the top floor of a historic building in the Upper East Side. Large windows revealed Manhattan illuminated by the afternoon sun, but neither Edith nor Ethan paid attention to the stunning view. The tension between them had been palpable since the elevator, where they'd remained on opposite sides, their gazes meeting through the mirror, saying things words couldn't express. When the door closed behind them, the silence was absolute. Ethan leaned back against the door, hands in his pockets as if he didn't trust himself not to touch her immediately. Edith remained in the center of the room, her heart beating so hard she was certain he could hear it. Edith. His voice was rough, loaded. If you're not sure, if this isn't what you want, we can just talk. I can make coffee. We can... Ethan. She turned to face him completely. Shut up. A slow, devastating smile curved his lips. Yes, ma'am. But neither of them moved. It was as if crossing that distance would make everything real. Irrevocable. It meant going from whispered promises to concrete actions. It meant admitting that what was between them wasn't just physical attraction. It was something infinitely deeper and more frightening. Finally, Ethan took his hands out of his pockets. He walked to her with measured steps, his eyes never leaving hers. When he stopped in front of Edith, so close she had to tilt her head back to look at him, he simply stood there, letting the anticipation build between them like a wave about to break. May I? He asked softly, his fingers lightly grazing her cheek. Yes. The permission was all he needed. Ethan raised his hand slowly as if touching her were a sacred privilege, and brushed away a strand of hair that had fallen across Edith's face. His fingers traced the line of her jaw, traveled down her neck, stopping at the racing pulse that throbbed there. Your heart is racing, he murmured, his thumb caressing that sensitive spot. Your fault. Good. He smiled against her skin, placing a soft kiss where his fingers had been. Because mine's worse. Edith raised her hand and placed it over his chest. Beneath the expensive shirt, Ethan's heart beat erratically, wildly. He covered her hand with his, keeping it there, letting her feel the effect she had on him. See? You destroy me, Edith Walker. She slid her hand upward, tracing his neck, her fingers threading through the hair at his nape. Then destroy me too. The kiss was different from the office. Slower, deeper. Ethan kissed her like someone savoring something precious, his mouth moving against hers with a controlled intensity that set every nerve ending in Edith's body on fire. His hand slid to her waist, pulling her against his body, eliminating any space between them. Edith could feel every defined muscle, every hard line pressed against her curves. His solidity was overwhelming, making her feel small and protected at the same time. When he gently bit her lower lip, she let out a sigh that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. Bedroom, Ethan murmured against her mouth. He guided her through the elegant hallways, but every few steps he stopped to kiss her again. Against the wall, under the doorway, in the dark corridor, as if he couldn't bear not having her in his arms for more than a few seconds. The bedroom was masculine and minimalist. King-size bed with dark sheets, floor-to-ceiling windows, an armchair in the corner. But Edith barely registered the details. Her attention was entirely on Ethan, on the way he looked at her as if she were the only real thing in his perfectly controlled world. He approached again, his hands finding her face with a tenderness that contrasted with the intensity of desire in his eyes. Are you sure? He asked once more, giving her every opportunity to back away. In response, Edith began unbuttoning his shirt, one by one revealing the bronzed skin, the defined muscles, the lines that told stories of discipline and control. When she reached the last button, she slid the shirt off his shoulders, letting it fall to the floor. I've never been more sure of anything, she whispered. Ethan's eyes darkened. With hands that trembled slightly, revealing a vulnerability he rarely showed, he brought his fingers to the first button of her blouse. He paused, his eyes seeking hers once more, asking silent permission. Edith nodded. The first button gave way, then the second. Each movement was deliberate, reverent, as if he were unwrapping the most precious gift. The blouse slid off her shoulders, falling softly to the floor beside his shirt. Ethan stepped back half a step, his eyes traveling over every inch of exposed skin. You're beautiful, he said with a raw sincerity that made Edith's eyes burn. Ethan. He pulled her back, and this time when their skin met, warm against warm without barriers, they both sighed. It was pure connection, intimacy in its most essential state. Ethan gently guided her to the bed. She lay down and he positioned himself over her, supporting his weight on his forearm so as not to crush her. For a long moment they just looked at each other, memorizing every detail, every expression, every shared breath. "You're beautiful," he repeated, lowering himself to kiss her forehead, her eyelids, her nose, her lips. "And strong, and real, and mine." "Yours," she agreed, her hands exploring his back, feeling the muscles contract under her touch. What followed was a slow dance of discovery. Each touch was a question, each kiss an answer. Ethan explored every inch of skin as if memorizing a sacred map. The curve of her neck that made her sigh, the sensitive spot just below her rib that made her arch, the way she gripped his hair when he kissed a certain place. Edith explored too, the tension that left his shoulders when she massaged there, the low, guttural sound he made when she lightly scratched his back, the way he closed his eyes when she kissed that specific spot on his neck. There was no rush. It was complete surrender. It was two hearts beating in sync for the first time. It was Ethan finally lowering all the walls and Edith allowing herself to be vulnerable with someone who could destroy her. When they finally became one, it was with eyes open, gazes locked, breaths intertwined. Ethan held her hands above her head, fingers laced together, anchor and promise. "Look at me," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "Don't close your eyes. I need to see you. I need you to see me." And Edith saw. She saw the man behind the facade. She saw the vulnerability, the fear, the love he didn't yet have the courage to name. She saw everything he was and everything he was afraid to be. "I see you," she whispered back. "And I'm not going anywhere." Something broke in his eyes. A single tear escaped, and Edith wiped it away with her thumb, pulling him into a kiss that was more communication than passion. It was promise. It was acceptance. It was love in its purest form. They moved together as if they'd always been meant for this. Every shared sigh, every synchronized touch. The outside world ceased to exist. There was only them, that moment, that connection that seemed to transcend the physical and touch something deeper, more essential. When they finally reached that peak together, it was with each other's names on their lips and their hands still intertwined, an anchor in a world that suddenly made sense for the first time. Afterward, as their breathing began to normalize, Ethan didn't pull away. He wrapped her in his arms, pulling her to his chest, his chin resting on top of her head. The silence that enveloped them wasn't empty. It was fullness. It was peace. It was finally being home. "Stay," he murmured against her hair. "Not just today. Always. Stay with me." Edith smiled against his chest, her heart overflowing. "Always." And in that moment, wrapped in each other while Manhattan glittered outside, they both believed that always would be possible. The soft afternoon light came through the panoramic windows, bathing the bedroom in golden and amber tones. Edith lay beside Ethan, her head resting on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart, a soothing melody that seemed to say, "You're safe here." His fingers traced lazy patterns on her back, traveling up and down her spine in a caress that was more comforting than sensual. But there was something in the air, a sweet tension, an undercurrent of desire that had never really dissipated, only temporarily dozed. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, his voice reverberating in the chest where Edith's cheek rested. "That this feels unreal?" She raised her head to look at him. "Like I'm going to wake up and find out it was just a dream." He rolled onto his side, facing her completely. His hand rose to brush away the strands of hair falling across her face, his fingers lingering on the curve of her cheek. "Then let me prove to you it's real." This time, when he kissed her, it was different. There wasn't the desperate urgency of the first time. There weren't years of accumulated tension exploding all at once. There was just them. Two hearts learning to surrender completely, without fear, without barriers. The kiss started soft, almost chaste, lips exploring lips with infinite patience. But slowly, gently, the intensity grew. Ethan's hand slid down her neck, his thumb caressing the racing pulse, feeling life throbbing there. "Do you feel this?" he whispered against her mouth. How my heart beats faster when I touch you. Edith placed her hand over his chest, feeling exactly what he described. I feel it. It's always like this, since day one. He placed soft kisses along her jaw, descending down her neck. You walk into a room and my whole body wakes up. As if until that moment I was just existing and you make me live. The words, loaded with raw honesty, made Edith's eyes burn. Ethan, shh. He returned to her lips, silencing any protest. Let me show you what I can't say. And he showed her. With each deliberate touch, each kiss placed like a promise, each shared sigh, Ethan explored her body not with the rush to conquer, but with the reverence of one who worships. Each curve was appreciated, each reaction memorized. When his fingers found a particularly sensitive spot below her ribs, Edith arched involuntarily, a sigh escaping her lips. Ethan smiled against her skin, returning to that exact spot, fascinated by the way her body responded to his. I like this, he murmured. I like discovering what makes you sigh, what makes you close your eyes, what makes you say my name that way. Edith's hands explored his back, feeling every defined muscle, every line that told stories of discipline and control. But now, under her fingers, he wasn't the untouchable CEO. He was just a man, vulnerable, present, completely hers. You have spots too, she teased gently, her nails lightly scratching the base of his neck. Ethan let out a low, guttural sound, his eyes darkening with desire. Edith, I like this, she echoed his earlier words. I like seeing you lose control. I like knowing it's me who undoes you like this. He captured her mouth in a deep, possessive kiss, communicating without words the devastating effect she had on him. When they separated, both were breathless, their hearts beating erratically. Ethan rolled, positioning himself over her, his arms supporting his weight on either side of Edith's head. For a long moment, he just looked at her, memorizing every detail, every expression, as if engraving that image somewhere permanent inside himself. You're so beautiful, he said with a sincerity that left no room for doubt. But it's not just that. You're brave, challenging, real. You see me beyond the masks and you don't run. How could anyone not fall in love with you? The air left Edith's lungs. Fall in love? His eyes held hers, intense and vulnerable. I fell in love with you, Edith. Completely, irrevocably, in a way that terrifies me and completes me at the same time. The tears came before she could stop them. Me too. God, Ethan, me too. The kiss that followed was different from all the previous ones. It was celebration. It was relief. It was two hearts finally admitting what had been growing between them since that first wrong audio. When they joined again, it was with reverent slowness. Ethan entered her world, her space, her heart with a gentleness that contrasted with the intensity of the desire between them. He paused, completely still, just feeling the connection, the way they fit together perfectly. You complete me, he whispered, his forehead pressed against hers. In ways I didn't even know I was incomplete. Edith wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling him deeper, closer. Then never let me go. Never. A promise. A vow. Never again. They moved together in a dance both ancient and new. There was no rush to get anywhere. The journey was the destination. Each movement was synchronized, each breath shared, each heartbeat echoing the others. Ethan held her hands again, intertwining their fingers, raising them above her head. It wasn't domination. It was connection. It was being so close, there was no longer any distinction between where one ended and the other began. Look at me, he asked, his voice rough. I want to see your eyes when we get there. Together. And Edith looked. She saw the love reflected in those gray eyes. She saw the promise of all the tomorrows. She saw the man who was afraid to love finally surrendering completely. I love you, she whispered, the words coming out like a prayer. I love you, he echoed. And for the first time in his adult life, he meant every syllable. When they finally reached that peak together, it was with each other's names being repeated like mantras, their hands still intertwined, their eyes locked, witnessing not just physical pleasure, but the union of two souls that had finally found their place in the world, in each other. Afterward, as the world slowly came back into focus, Ethan didn't pull away. He remained there, still connected, still close, as if physical distance were unbearable. He placed soft kisses all over her face, on her forehead, her eyelids, her cheeks, her nose, finally on her lips. "Stay with me today," he asked, rolling to the side but immediately pulling her into his arms. "Tomorrow. Forever." Edith smiled, nestling against his chest, where his heart still beat rapidly. Forever sounds good. He pulled the sheet over them both, creating a safe cocoon where the outside world couldn't reach them. His hand found hers beneath the soft fabric, fingers intertwining naturally, automatically. "I never imagined that wrong audio would bring me you," Ethan murmured against her hair. "The best mistake of my life. The best decision of mine." The silence that enveloped them wasn't empty. It was filled with synchronized breaths, intertwined heartbeats, and the absolute certainty that, despite all the obstacles still to come, they had found something rare and precious. They had found each other. And for the first time in a long while, they both believed that love was possible, that forever was real, that they were finally home. The weeks that followed were the happiest Edith had ever lived. She and Ethan no longer hid their relationship. It was impossible anyway. The way he looked at her in meetings, how he unconsciously reached for her hand under the table, how he smiled in that rare, genuine way whenever she walked into the room. Everyone knew. And surprisingly, no one cared. James Carter had been transferred to the Chicago office, by his own choice, he said. But Edith suspected Ethan had something to do with it. Rebecca was radiant, constantly teasing Edith about finally taming the Manhattan lion. "You're glowing," Rebecca commented one afternoon as they had lunch together. "Seriously, it's like you swallowed a light bulb." Edith smiled, unable to hide her happiness. "That's how I feel. Like everything finally fits. But the universe has a cruel sense of humor." The following Tuesday, Ethan was at his desk when the email arrived. Edith saw the immediate change, the way his body went rigid, how his jaw tightened, how his fingers closed into fists on the desk. "Ethan?" She approached, touching his shoulder. "What is it?" He closed the laptop abruptly. "Nothing. Just business matters. Don't treat me like I'm an idiot." Edith walked around the desk, forcing him to face her. "I know you. What happened?" For a long moment he just stared at her. And Edith saw something in those eyes that made her stomach turn. Guilt. Conflict. Fear. "Ethan," she insisted, her voice trembling slightly. "Tell me." He sighed, running his hands over his face in a gesture of defeat. "The merger with Hamilton Industries, they sent new conditions." "What kind of conditions?" "Edith, what kind of conditions?" He opened the laptop again, turning the screen toward her. The email was there, cold and impersonal. "Mr. Blackwell, after careful consideration, Hamilton Industries has determined that Miss Walker's presence in an executive position represents a conflict of interest. To proceed with the merger, we request her transfer or termination from the company. This is a non-negotiable condition. We await your response by Friday." Edith felt the world sway beneath her feet. "They want you to fire me." "I won't do it." Ethan stood up, holding her shoulders. "Never. Do you hear me? I choose you. Always. But the merger is worth billions. You've worked years on this deal. And you're worth more than any deal." He pulled her into his arms, holding her with an almost desperate intensity. "We'll find another way. Another investor. Another path." Edith wanted to believe, wanted to cling to that promise and never let go. But reality was more complex than feelings. "How many people will lose their jobs if this merger doesn't happen?" she asked against his chest. Ethan fell silent. "How many, Ethan?" 220. His voice came out strangled. "Maybe 300. Edith closed her eyes, the pain gripping her chest like a vice. "Then you have to accept." "No." He pulled her back, holding her face between his hands. "I won't lose you again. Not for this." Not for anything. It's not losing me. It's doing what's right for the company. You are what's right for me. The declaration echoed in the silent office. Edith felt tears burn her eyes, but she held them back. She needed to be strong, needed to be rational, needed to be everything he couldn't be in that moment. Let's think calmly, she said, forcing firmness into her voice. We have until Friday. We'll find a solution that doesn't involve choosing between me and the company. But as the days passed, it became increasingly clear there was no magic solution. Hamilton Industries was inflexible. Other investors couldn't close the deal in time, and the consequences of losing the merger were devastating, not just financially, but for hundreds of families who depended on those jobs. On Thursday night, Edith found another email. This time it wasn't for Ethan. It was for her, from Hamilton's legal department. The content was clear. They had investigated her relationship with Ethan and determined it was inappropriate from the start. They suggested she resign voluntarily to preserve her professional reputation. The implicit alternative was clear. They would destroy her publicly. Edith stared at the screen for long minutes, her heart slowly breaking into silent pieces. She didn't tell Ethan, not immediately. On Friday morning, she arrived early at the office. She made his coffee as she always did, leaving it on his desk with a simple note. You deserve to have everything, including the merger. Then she packed her things in the box Rebecca had helped her bring the night before. When Ethan arrived at 7:30, she was ready. Edith? He stopped in the doorway, confusion quickly transforming into panic when he saw the box. What are you doing? What I should have done from the beginning. She kept her voice steady, though her heart was shattering. I'm resigning. No. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, taking the box from her hands and throwing it on the floor. No. You're not doing this. It's already done. I sent the letter to HR this morning. Then I'll cancel it. Edith, you can't. I can, and I will. She finally faced him, and he recoiled at what he saw in her eyes. Pain, determination. Goodbye. Hamilton sent me an email yesterday. They're going to destroy me publicly if I don't leave. They'll claim I manipulated you, that I used the relationship to get the promotion, that... Lies! Ethan roared. All lies. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. Perception is what counts. Edith took a deep breath, forcing herself to continue. And the truth is, you need this merger. The company needs it. 200 families need it. I won't be the reason everything falls apart. You're not the reason. They are. He tried to reach for her, but she backed away. Ethan, please, don't make this harder than it already is. Harder? His voice broke. You're leaving me, and you want me to make it easy? I'm not leaving you. I'm freeing you to do what needs to be done. I don't want to be freed, I want you. The shout echoed in the office. Edith felt her own defenses crack, tears finally escaping despite her best efforts. And I want you to have the empire you built, for you to save those jobs, for you not to hate me 5 years from now for choosing a relationship over everything you worked for. I would never... You will. She wiped the tears with the back of her hand. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not next month. But eventually you'll look at what you lost because of me and you'll resent it. And I can't live knowing I became the reason your dream died. Ethan fell silent, his chest rising and falling rapidly, his hands opening and closing into helpless fists. You turned me into a variable, Edith said softly, picking up the box from the floor. Into a business equation. And maybe you were right from the beginning. Maybe Portland really shouldn't have meant anything. Don't say that. His voice was hoarse, broken. You know that's not true. I know I love you. The tears flowed freely now. And because I love you, I need to go. I need to let you have everything you deserve. You are everything I deserve. No, I'm just the woman who loved you enough to let you go. She walked to the door, each step feeling like shards of glass piercing her heart. At the door, she paused, but didn't turn around. Sign the merger papers, Ethan. Save the company. Save those jobs. Her voice came out as a broken whisper. And try not to hate me for it. Edith, please. But she was already gone, leaving behind the man she loved and the wreckage of what could have been. Ethan stood in the middle of the empty office, his legs giving out until he sat on the floor, his back against the desk. And for the first time since adolescence, Ethan Blackwell cried, for everything he had, for everything he lost, and for the woman who had loved him enough to sacrifice herself for him. And he hated her for it. But he hated himself even more. 3 weeks, 21 days, 504 hours since Edith had walked out of Ethan's office with her heart in pieces and the determination to never look back. But the human body has its own plans. It started with morning sickness that wouldn't go away. Then came the inexplicable exhaustion, the sensitivity in places that had never been sensitive before, and that strange, almost imperceptible feeling that something fundamental had changed inside her. Edith knew. Even before taking the first test. She just knew. But taking the test would make it all real. Irrevocable. So she postponed it. 1 day. 2. A week. Until on a Tuesday morning, with trembling hands and her heart in her throat, she bought 3 different tests at the farthest pharmacy she could find, as if distance could change the result. Sitting on the bathroom floor of her small apartment, she waited through the 3 longest minutes of her life. Positive. She took the second test. Positive. The third. Positive. Edith sat there. The 3 tests lined up on the edge of the sink, the pink lines screaming a truth she wasn't prepared to face. Pregnant. She was pregnant with Ethan Blackwell's child, the man she loved and had left behind, the man who probably hated her for giving up on them, the man she shouldn't reach out to now. The tears came in violent waves, not from sadness exactly, but from pure, raw fear. How would she do this alone? How would she raise a child without a father? How would she explain to a child that their father was a billionaire CEO who didn't know they existed? Rebecca was the first person she told. "You have to tell him," was her friend's immediate reaction, gripping Edith's hands tightly. "Edith, he has the right to know. He has the right to live the life he chose." Edith wiped the tears with the back of her hand. "Without me, without complications. I'm not going to show up now saying, 'Surprise, you're going to be a dad and destroy everything again.' That's not fair to him, or to the baby." "Fair?" Edith let out a bitter laugh. "Nothing about this is fair, but it's the best choice I have." Except it wasn't one baby. The confirmation came 2 weeks later at the first ultrasound. The doctor moved the transducer across Edith's belly, her eyes fixed on the screen, and then smiled. "Well, this is interesting." Edith's heart raced. "What, is something wrong?" No, everything's perfect. It's just that you're expecting twins." The world stopped. "What?" "Twins." The doctor pointed to the screen. "See here? 2 gestational sacs, 2 strong heartbeats. Congratulations, Mom." Edith looked at the screen where 2 tiny specks pulsed with life. Life that she and Ethan had created together in those perfect afternoons in his apartment, when the world seemed possible and love seemed enough. 2 babies. 2 of Ethan's children that he would never know. The guilt swallowed her whole, but determination was stronger. She would do this alone. She had to. Edith threw herself into freelance work. She reactivated the blog she'd kept years ago, a space where she poured out sharp humor about corporate life and disastrous relationships. Except now, the content was different. More real. More raw. More honest. She wrote about the man she'd loved and let go, about the sacrifice she'd made, about being pregnant and terrified and determined, about loving someone enough to disappear from their life. He tried to protect me but forgot to include me in the decision. The post went viral. In 48 hours, it had 500,000 views. People related. They commented with their own stories. They shared their own pain. Edith became a voice for women who loved complicated men, for people who made impossible sacrifices, for broken hearts trying to put themselves back together. But she didn't know that Ethan was reading every word. After Edith left, Ethan had become a shadow version of himself. He signed the merger papers because he couldn't think of anything else to do. He saved the jobs. He made the billions. And felt completely empty. Rebecca, who refused to abandon Edith even while working for Ethan, eventually mentioned the blog. "She's writing again, in case you care." Ethan feigned indifference. But that night, alone in his apartment that still vaguely smelled of Edith's perfume, he opened the blog and read everything, every post, every word, every piece of broken heart that she poured onto the screen. People say that loving means choosing to stay, but sometimes loving means having the courage to leave. It's looking at the man you love and realizing that the best thing you can do for him is disappear. Ethan felt something break in his chest. I'm pregnant. Well, not just pregnant. I'm expecting twins. 2 babies from the man who probably hates me. 2 little humans who will grow up without a father because I was too much of a coward to tell the truth. The phone slipped from Ethan's hands, falling to the floor with a crash he barely registered. Pregnant. Twins. His children. She was carrying his children and hadn't told him. The anger came first, furious and hot. How dare she hide something like this? How could she make this decision alone? But then he kept reading. I didn't tell him because he deserves peace. He deserves to build the empire he worked for without a pregnant ex-employee complicating everything. He deserves to find someone who isn't a variable in his business equations. Someone who can stand beside him without destroying everything. But God, I miss him. I miss the way he said my name. I miss the shared silences. I miss looking at him and seeing a future that now only exists in my imagination. These babies will grow up knowing their father was extraordinary. They'll know he built an empire, that he was strong and smart and incredibly handsome. They'll know I loved him enough to let him be happy without me, even if it means I'm unhappy without him. Ethan didn't realize he was crying until tears fell on the phone, blurring the words on the screen. She had left him out of love, was raising his children alone out of love, was sacrificing herself, breaking herself, destroying herself, out of love. And he was here, sitting in an empty apartment with billions in the bank and a heart that stopped beating the day she left. He'd been an idiot, a coward, a fool, but not anymore. Ethan grabbed his phone, his hands shaking as he searched for the latest blog post. There, among hundreds of supportive comments, he wrote, Edith, I never hated you. Not for a second. I love you. I always have. And our children deserve a father who's brave enough to fight for them. For you. For us. Give me a chance to fix this. Please. He didn't sign it. He didn't need to. She would know. And in an apartment across the city, with her hands on her belly that was beginning to round, Edith read the comment through tears she couldn't contain. Her phone rang. An unknown number. She answered with her heart in her throat. Edith. His voice, and that voice she dreamed about every night, was hoarse, broken, full of emotion. Please. Meet me. We need to talk. And for the first time in weeks, Edith allowed herself to hope. Edith chose neutral ground, a small park in Brooklyn that she used to visit when she needed to think, away from the Manhattan buzz. It was a Saturday morning. Sunlight filtered through the trees, creating patterns of light and shadow on the ground. And she waited on a wooden bench with her hands clasped over her belly, that now showed a subtle but undeniable curve. She saw him before he saw her. Ethan walked down the stone path wearing jeans, and a simple t-shirt, without the armor of impeccable suits. He looked different, more human, more vulnerable. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd run his hands through it repeatedly, and there were dark shadows under his eyes that told stories of sleepless nights. When his eyes finally found hers, he stopped mid-path. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. 2 broken hearts trying to figure out if there was still a way to put themselves back together. Then Ethan moved. Not slowly, not cautiously, but with determined purpose. He crossed the distance between them and dropped to his knees in front of the bench, his hands reaching for hers with a reverence that took the air from Edith's lungs. You're beautiful, he said, his voice hoarse. His eyes dropped to her belly, and something broke in his expression. God, Edith. Our babies. Ethan. She tried to pull her hands away, but he held on tighter. No, please, just let me talk. He took a deep breath, his eyes returning to her face. I read everything. Every word you wrote, every post, every pain you poured into that blog. You shouldn't have. I should have. I needed to. He squeezed her hands. You said you left me because you loved me, that you sacrificed yourself so I could have everything. But you don't understand, Edith. I have nothing without you. Tears were already falling down Edith's face. You have the company, the merger, the empire. I have empty walls and cold silences. His voice broke. I have endless meetings where I look at the door hoping you'll walk in. I have nights where I wake up reaching for the other side of the bed looking for you. I have billions in the bank and a heart that stopped beating the day you left. Ethan, before you, I just existed. I breathed, worked, functioned, but I didn't live. You taught me what living is, what it is to laugh without calculating, what it is to feel without fear, what it is to love without barriers. He released one of her hands to gently touch her rounded belly. And now you're giving me the greatest gift of all. 2 babies. 2 lives we created together. 2 reasons to be the man you always saw in me, even when I couldn't see it myself. You don't have to do this out of obligation, Edith said through tears. I won't trap you. Trap? He let out a disbelieving laugh. Edith, I'm a free man for the first time in my life. Free from the walls I built. Free from the fear that paralyzed me. Free to love you the way you always deserved to be loved. He got up from the ground only to sit beside her on the bench, pulling her into his arms. Edith resisted for half a second before melting against his chest, inhaling that scent that was fundamentally Ethan. Woody, clean, home. I want the chaos, he murmured against her hair. I want the stumbles and the mistakes. I want to be there at 3 a.m. when the babies cry. I want to change diapers and learn how to make bottles. I want to argue about ridiculous names and wall colors. I want everything that's imperfect and real in ours. And the company? Edith asked, her voice muffled against his chest. Hamilton Industries? The deal? I canceled it. She pulled back abruptly. What? I canceled the merger. He held her face between his hands. I sent a polite email saying we won't do business with people who turn human beings into variables, that Blackwell Enterprises values its employees above all else, and that they can go to hell. Ethan, but the jobs are safe. I found 3 smaller investors who together cover the same amount. It'll take longer, be more complicated, but no one will lose their job, and no one will tell me who I can or can't love. Edith stared at him in disbelief. You did that for me? I did it for us. He placed a soft kiss on her forehead. For these 2 little humans growing in here. Another kiss on her belly. And because I realized you were right from the beginning, I was existing, not living. And I'd rather live an imperfect life with you than exist perfectly alone. I love you. Edith whispered, tears flowing freely. God, I love you so much. Then marry me. The world stopped. What? Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. When he opened it, Edith saw not 1, but 3 rings. An elegant, delicate diamond ring, and 2 tiny gold bands. 1 for you, he explained, his voice trembling with emotion. And 2 for our babies, so that from day 1 they know they belong to us. That we're a family, that nothing will separate us again. Ethan, Edith could barely see through the tears. Edith Walker, you're the bravest, most infuriating, most beautiful woman I've ever met. You challenged me when everyone agreed with me. You made me laugh when I forgot how. You loved me when I didn't deserve it, and you gave me hope when I thought I'd lost everything. He took the larger ring from the box, holding it between trembling fingers. Marry me. Let me spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you. Let me be the father our children deserve. Let me be the man you always saw in me. Yes. The word came out before Edith could think. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss that was celebration and promise and new beginning. A kiss that erased weeks of pain and planted seeds of possible futures. A kiss that said, we're going to be okay, in every language the heart knows. When they separated, they were both laughing and crying simultaneously. We're going to have babies, Edith said, the realization finally landing. 2 babies. We're going to have a family, Ethan corrected, his hands resting protectively on her belly. A beautiful, chaotic, imperfect family that's ours. They got married 3 months later, in a small garden surrounded by close friends and wildflowers. Edith wore a simple dress that accommodated her already large belly, and Ethan cried when he saw her walking toward him, not from sadness, but from pure joy. Rebecca was the maid of honor. James Carter, who had returned from Chicago for the ceremony, gave a hilarious speech about how not to win over a woman. And when Ethan and Edith exchanged vows with their hands intertwined and 2 lives pulsing between them, they promised not perfection, but effort, not the absence of storms, but the courage to face them together. "I promise to love you on the easy days and the impossible ones," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the tears. "I promise to be the partner you deserve, the father our children need, and the man who will never again be afraid to feel." "I promise to challenge you when you need it," Edith responded, smiling through tears, "to make you laugh when you forget how, and to remind you every day that you're so much more than your walls. You're my home." 2 months later, on an August dawn, 2 healthy and noisy babies were born. A girl who inherited her father's gray eyes, a boy who got his mother's mischievous smile. Ethan held them both for the first time, with hands that trembled with reverence and fear and absolute love. "Hello, little ones," he whispered, tears falling freely. "You have no idea how you changed my life before you even got here." Edith watched from the bed, exhausted but radiant, her heart so full it felt ready to burst. And when Ethan looked at her, with 2 babies in his arms and infinite love in his eyes, she knew. She knew that mistakes can transform into miracles, that broken hearts can heal stronger, that sometimes the happy ending isn't perfect. It's real, and that was more than enough. It was everything. Sometimes life puts us in front of impossible choices. Edith chose love, not the kind of love that traps, but the kind that sets free. She left believing she was saving the man she loved, not knowing that by doing so she was saving herself too. Because real love isn't about silent sacrifices or lonely martyrs. It's about having the courage to come back, to tell the truth, to build something imperfect, but real. Ethan learned that empty empires don't warm cold dawns, and Edith discovered that sometimes the greatest courage isn't in leaving, it's in allowing someone to stay. And you? How many times have you chosen fear disguised as protection? How many stories have you left unfinished because it seemed safer to give up? If this story touched your heart, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, have you ever loved someone enough to let them go? I want to hear your story. You know that feeling of living the life others chose for you? Of looking in the mirror and not recognizing who you've become? I spent years thinking it was too late to start over, that my best days were already behind me, until I discovered I was completely wrong. I've left something pinned in the comments that speaks directly to those who feel there's still a better version of themselves waiting to be discovered. It's not for everyone, just for those who still believe they deserve to live, not just exist.